Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we have Lauren Kurth coming to us from Australia. Lauren is a cosmic visionary, a technology researcher, source intelligence healer, UFO-NHI experiencer, founder of Unified Self, with an ability to connect with her client's higher self and the information unified field of the source of all creation. Founder of Source Intelligence Contact Global Movement, leader, teacher, UFO-NHI Contact Field Group leader, a quantum healing hypnotherapist and thought field therapy facilitator, and an experienced sound healer with 11 years of sound resonance under her belt. A keynote speaker, writer, and published columnist, she has featured in documentaries and multi-award-winning films, new papers, radio shows, and magazines. She is passionate about consciousness, personal development, technology to liberate humanity, and the restoration of our planet. So thank you so much for coming on, Lauren.
Thanks for having me, Yannick. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. Now, you've been through a lot, and you're quite active in the field. So I can't wait to get into those experiences. When did your experiences in general start? Did you start off as a child, like most of us, or like down the road?
Yeah, sure. My first memory or experience, I was somewhere around between 3 and 4, as a child, and I remember waking and having a very, very strong pull to get out of bed and go to the window, and sort of pull back the curtains and tippy toe up to the window, and I saw a classic disc-shaped craft hovering above the trees on the other side of a rugby field, maybe somewhere between 300 and 400 meters away. Sort of hard to tell the distance as a child. And that ship hovered for all of what it seemed like a few seconds, and then it shot off to my right and headed out across the mountain that we could view from our house as well. There was a sense and a feeling of I knew what that was. There wasn't like, what is that? A wonderment. It was more a sense of a belonging, knowing what that was. That experience has stuck with me all my life, as well as many experiences, even sleep state experiences. I know I was awake and went back to bed and went back to sleep. Didn't really speak about it with my family. As far as I remember, and even talking to my mum, she doesn't remember me mentioning anything about it, which to me I put down to the fact that it wasn't frightening for me, that I didn't need to tell her or get an explanation, because there was a very strong feeling that I knew what that was. As an adult, working with my higher self and in a meditative process, I've seen another aspect of that experience. And I believe that what I was consciously aware of was the end part of the experience. So that was me being put back into my bed or into my consciousness, waking up and running to the window because that was leaving. And I'd had an experience on that craft. Had a bit of flack, actually, from the UFO field for saying that I remember that later in meditation, which is interesting. But it was pretty clear from what I'd seen that it definitely was the end of the experience, and it explained to me why I knew what it was and why I had a sense of familiarity and almost don't leave me. Not a homesick feeling. I hear a lot of people talk about wanting to go home. I love it here and have never really had that. But yeah, certainly aware that that was a goodbye to some golden beings that I wasn't going to see for a long time.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. I mean, I've had many experiences with different beings, and it's an interesting thing. I think they're here to somewhat nudge us into waking up.
Okay.
Never have I had a full picture given to me. I've been given small bits. I call it chasing the rainbow, which I actually stopped doing when I really started working with my higher self, because then I started to get real quality information and things like that about what I need to do. But it's my belief that this is my first life as a human being, that I've been many other places in the multiverse and being different types of beings. I've been muscle tested by many people, scientists alike, and that comes up as a truth in my body. And also it's been told to me by many readers and healings throughout all my life. And I'm told I won't come again. And that was first told to me when I was about 7 years old during an experience, that I was here to know what the truth of God was, a shift in consciousness and an earth storm. And so from a young age, I went to church, every church in our community. I befriended the kids at school that were religious, looking for the truth of God. Didn't find it in any of those places, to be honest. It was inside me. A shift in consciousness. Well, we all know we're going through that, and I'd say we're in a bit of a shitstorm at the moment on the planet. So, which is all part of it. It's all part of the inversion here, and the left and right wing of the bird, you could say. It has pushed me to really look at myself, to develop myself and to know myself, to really know myself, because when you're having experiences with something that seems to be able to influence your consciousness and your mind, I think it's a really good idea to know what's yours and what's not. So that's been huge for me. So I haven't, had information go off and do this, go off and do that. I've had some downloads that have related to unified physics and perpetual energy and things like that. But there was a lot more for me to work out and do for myself. So I feel like they've come, and I've had contact all my life just to somewhat check up on me, to keep it real. So I'm an aware person. I'm aware that I have a gift and an ability, but I do like to keep my feet firmly on the ground. I feel if you have a message in this world, you have to come from a place of integrity, from intelligence, from being grounded, because there is a lot of ungrounded, unrealistic, fanatical people in this field as well, which I found quite frustrating. Yeah. So it's part of why I started doing my own sky watching. I actually use my own protocol, not so much the CE5, and that is based on the unified field and geometry and what's going on inside our body and consciousness that I understand. And part of that field work was to educate people about what is in the sky, what's not a UFO, because what I was finding was people were coming and having an amazing experience. They felt good, and all of a sudden everything in the sky became a UFO. And so it's actually why I started doing what I was doing, to educate people, to have a very grounded space to experience and allow it to happen naturally without people assuming what's going on, or that satellite's a UFO because it blinked once. It has to shines an intelligent communication and a response to me for me to consider it anything, actually.
Feedback.
So yeah, absolutely. It's led me in a direction to really look for technology and ancient things to help this planet. My passion is, perpetual energy for the planet, for humanity, and ways that we can clean up the planet using the laws of nature and sound and frequency and all of that sort of stuff, everything being energy before matter, led me on a deep exploration of consciousness. So I've kind of always been fascinated about that. But to understand the human mind as the structure that actually runs the show for humanity, but it is also the voice of the heart, because when you learn about energy, everything comes through your heart field and hits your mind field at the speed of light. So and that's led me to my work that I do, Unified Self, and the healing work that I do. Which, I think we all have that gift. I think it's our birthright. And I think that's part of what this awakening is about, is unifying who we are and awakening to our supernatural ability, because it is supernatural. It's not unnatural. And it's our birthright for all of us to be able to heal our own bodies and access our own intelligence through learning our lessons.
Telepathy, really. A lot of us, our experiences are telepathic, or we receive messages. And I used to have voices of a female, and they'd tell me of stuff that would happen later on in the future. So I think it's to be able to connect to that is what a lot of us are attempting, or at least doing, really unconsciously. I
had a lot of what I would call sleep state experiences. I'm not one for remembering my dreams. I sleep very, very soundly. But I have had repetitive dreams over and over throughout my life. And they used to come usually with an awareness in the evening. This sort of started happening maybe around 7, after I was told what I was here for. There would be a sense in the evening, sort of around just before sunset. It was almost as if, I could feel it. It was something coming across a waveform that would hit me, and I would know that I was going to have an experience that night, and go to bed and then wake up. I guess you could call it in a lucid state, where you're aware that you're dreaming, but you also have control of that. You have touch, smell, sensation, heat, all of those things. And I used to see curtains sort of waving as if the window was open, and blue orbs would come into that room. And then what I remember being what looked like a classic little grey. And I used to think we were going to the moon and that I could fly with them, because there would be a linking of hands or arms, and off we'd go. And now I probably think it was more likely either my soul going, my spirit, or the physical. It's hard to say whether those experiences. I used to have those regularly as a child. I used to look forward to them.
Did anything happen when you were being brought back? Because let's say you came back into your body, you felt heavy, you felt, or did you drop you?
No, I can't say I felt heavy or anything that in my body, but I did wake up in some unusual places. So I do remember waking up, coming back to consciousness, I should say, sitting outside on the doorstep with the dog. I do remember waking up in the lounge, clothing on the wrong way. So things like that. I have woken up with marks and things on my body. So I've not so much as a child, that's been more as an adult. To me, they're just signs or confirmations that something has actually happened. As an adult, I've had healing from them as well. Some pretty profound things. Lots of seeing sparkles all the time as a kid, blue and gold, It's interesting because as a child, you think that everyone experiences these things. So it wasn't until I got older and I'd start speaking about what I know, I realised that was kind of shunned and shut down. So I'll give you an example. I used to astral travel while I was awake. And I remember being, 10 years old and coming back into my body and knowing the children I was going to have, and that my son's first name, and really? He has that name, and being told off by my teacher because she saw that as, I guess, something that wasn't normal, and probably related it to, a 10-year-old talking about having children, maybe something sexual or something like that, which it totally wasn't. It was more of a vision that I'd had. And I just blurted it out loud and then realised I'm standing in line at school. So I remember experiences at school where I kind of woke up at school and in the middle of people reciting times tables and things like that, and wondering kind of how did I get here, not remembering going to school that morning, things like that. As a child, apart from that early experience, there was just minor things. Things really ramped up. As a teenager, I was a bit of a punk. You're just trying to live your life. I also you know, we had some family issues, our family separated and things like that. And I just wanted to be a normal teenager and just fit in. I always felt like I was a little bit different in my environment, to my, you know, perhaps to my family. A lot of stuff really started sort of after teenage, after 19, 20, actually, when I had my first child. Lots more started to happen. But I guess if you asked any of my friends, they would have always said I was a bit of a weird one and always talked about weird things. And I've seen spirit all my life.
Really?
You know, I saw my first spirits when I was 4. I've had telepathy with animals, especially with horses. 2 of my horses had a complete link with them. One I broke in and didn't even have to ride with a bridle. So wow. I could call her or tell her the night before, meet you here at 3 tomorrow, and she'd be cantering down the hill, neighing out to me on my way to see her from the pony club, which was great because we had a 120-acre pony club, so not having to walk the hills for horses was an advantage. Yeah, had a deep respect for nature. I remember as a little child having a pet cemetery of bugs, and you know, if I found a dead bird, I'd want to honor it and bury it, and just strange things like that. So, I mean, that could be normal childhood stuff, but I was always a little bit weird, I should say. But the main lot of contact, you know, everything really ramped up after 2012. So, and that's kind of when I sort of decided I was going to go more public with what I was experiencing. So not lots and lots as a child, lots of little things that I think a lot of people see. A lot of people see sparkles and then just blow that off as something in their sight or their vision. But when you've had it several thousand times and you've got perfect eyes still, and very keen eyes and keen hearing, you recognize it's something else. So, but then you start associating it to things that start happening in your environment as you become more sensitive to energy and things like that. But my main real experience where I realized I was going to have to step up in life and be who I needed to be was around 2007. And that's when I had the experience with the Arcturian in my garden. I sent you a picture of that blue being. Mm-hmm. When I had that experience, I was outside. Wherever I've gone in the world, I've normally made a stone circle. So the north, south, east, and west, you know, the earth and the ether, back to spirit. It's been something that's been very strong in me to have that for about the last 25 years. I've kind of had one wherever I've lived. And I was standing, I made a very beautiful one. It was all lined with crystal inside, white crystal rock, and it was quite large. And I was standing doing a standing breathing meditation, just taking in the sun, and just doing a flow breathing within me. And I had the telepathy first, and I was told that I would have to step up and I would speak publicly about this, and I would share with people and do a whole lot of things. And at the time I had young children, and my ex-husband at the time didn't particularly have the same interest as me as far as the UFOs. It really wasn't something he wanted to experience. He's very much an earth person. And also, you know, there's the stigma of being a bit of a Fruit Loop as well, I guess, that a lot of people kind of struggle with. And I'm in my garden and I'm having the telepathy, and I'm almost having a conversation back saying, you know, I don't think I am going to be doing that. You know, it's not really what I'm thinking. I just become a sound healer sort of at the time. And no, they said, no, you will be doing this. This is what you will be doing. And I said, well, if that's the truth, I need to see you. And there was a bit of a back and forward with that being and something else, because I was aware that there was a secondary conversation going on that I wasn't quite hearing. And eventually they agreed. And what happened in the atmosphere around me, as clear as I'm looking at you, was blue orbs, small, sort of, you know, marble size, started coming into the environment, and they gathered like a cell and blipped into bigger orbs and then eventually into the being. Now, in hindsight, I'm not sure if that was a hologram, which is just a projection of consciousness, or a physical being that could hide half of himself, because I only saw him from the waist up like the genie. And later on, when I've had energy visits from that being, he told me he was well over 12 foot high, and that at 5'2", I might have been a little bit intimidated by that, which I get. And that experience only lasted a few seconds, maybe 3, and then blip, he was gone, the same way he blipped in. And I got to see him. He was this beautiful, what I call Arcturian blue. He had an elongated head. He had no hair. He had very almond, almost Asian-shaped eyes, a very small mouth, and he had lips, but he was using telepathy. He had a quite predominant energy center of the heart. So very masculine, but very authoritative, but very peaceful as well. There was no sense of fear whatsoever. I knew I'd had some sort of contact with that being many, many times, probably back to the childhood with the blue orbs coming into the room. That's kind of my feeling for it. But still, I don't know for sure, because he'd never showed himself before. The next few days later, I had booked in 3 months earlier to have the guide drawing done with a friend of mine, Francie, and she came along and she started drawing him. And as she was doing the eyes, she was doing the big black alien eyes, and I had that thought, oh, it's not him. The eyes were different. And as I thought that, she said, oh, he's telling me the eyes are different. She changed them to the Asian sort of almond-shaped eyes. So there was actually, a connection there between my thoughts, what I was thinking, because you can imagine my surprise as she starts drawing this blue being that I've just seen 2 days earlier, which was really neat. And when she took the drawing, she takes a photograph and then channels the message. And the message was that we are the Arcturians from the starship Athena. And there was a message just about support, that they were here to support me, and that I was on track and there anytime I needed support. I mentioned to you earlier, when I closed my Aussie SETI centre down because I was going through some things and had to step away from that for a while, I had a lady come to my door as I was locking it for the last time, who gave me a book that was written by a doctor and some friends of hers. And it was sort of a channeled book. They had an interaction through their computer with these beings. And I'm not allowed to read anyone else's experience. That was given to me in my 20s, that all of my information would come through my higher self, and that would be very important later on in life, which it is now with the work that I do. And so I wasn't allowed to fill my consciousness with other people's experience and stories, because if you know anything about memory, and if someone has an unusual experience, they can relate to that, and all of a sudden that can blend into their experience, that fake memory type thing. So it was very clear not to do that. And if I tried to read, I'd be put to sleep in 3 minutes. I tried reading in the park and woken up snoring in the park, which is embarrassing for me, not my norm. So I took the book gratefully, because she insisted that I have it. I tried to deny the book because I didn't want to waste it. And it went into a box, and when I moved, and a few years later, probably 2, I went through that box and I found it in the box. And I went upstairs, I think, to make a cup of tea as I was clearing out. And I come back down, and that book had then gone from the box, out of the box, and on top of another box. And I thought, okay, all right. So I went and actually sat in my bedroom where I had the drawing on the wall in my room. And I said, well, if you want me to know something from this book, you've got one chance to show me. And so I went to a page and opened it up, and it said, we are the Arcturians from the starship Athena. It was word for word what was written there. So that was at a time where I was ready to give all the UFO work up. So I've done that a few times. I've sort of pulled away, felt like I've put in a lot of effort, and burning the candle at both ends. And also I was a little bit frustrated, I guess, with it all. Had some outside interference, you could say. I've had my I've had my phone tapped, I've had my house tapped,
Okay.
and I've had, the telecommunications come in and check that out and ask me a heap of questions about where I worked, because my phone was definitely playing up. I had an interview with a magazine, quite a mainstream magazine years ago, and as they pulled into my driveway, all my internet was knocked out. The telecommunications said that there was a lightning strike 80 meters from my house. It was a clear day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. So different things are happening, as crazy as it sounds. We've had the helicopter hover over our house, for quite some time. I've had people actually on my property that I've chased off my property. Oh, no. We've been at dinner and have had a man, quite a tall man, walk past a window, and I chased him off the property with a machete in hand because it frightened my children. So yeah. I've definitely had some interference. People coming into my life that I call plants, that have usually had some military background, that have come in and caused a bit of trouble, you could say. Yeah. So that made me withdraw a lot, actually, and every time I've tried to pull out, I keep getting thrown back in. And even with more the science side of things, it always comes back to something far more than we can imagine. So
did you how did you realize that your phone was tapped? Mine, when I was dating that British abductee, each time, because when she was overseas, she had to go back eventually. Each time we phoned up or I'd phone another experiencer, only for those two people, I'd hear these weird beeps, like 1980s beeps on the phone, like bloop, 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 as if the phone was being transferred to someone else. And everything stopped when, the abductee, from Britain we had to break up for obvious reasons. But as soon as that happened, it stopped. Or I was calling the other experiencer, and she heard it, and she says, what was that? And I said, we're probably being like tapped or spied upon. And then another weird sound happened after that, and poof, nothing, no more beeps after that. So I'm not. Did you go through
the home phone used to click all the time. There was always a click noise, which we sort of put down to we lived in rural property. Sometimes if the fences aren't grounded, that can affect things like that. But we also had that weird dialing sound, like the old fax machine, or what the old dial-up computers, 25 years ago used to sound like. That was on the home phone. The mobile phone was something else. So I would start talking to friends, my good friends, about something important or relevant, and I'd sound like a robot. It would do strange things. There's also something that happens on your phone when your phone's recording, that you can look up online, where a light goes on and something external is recording from your apps, always at important conversations. So we try and go as encrypted as possible. Some of the plants, I met a guy, a gentleman, I can't remember his name. I don't want to remember his name, at a UFO conference. Sorry, not a conference, a meetup. And I was a speaker there. Now, I'm a very friendly person. I'm a Leo. I get along well with most people. I can mix in most crowds. I did not want to know this person. I refused eye contact. I kept turning my back to him. He tried to go through several people to get me into a meeting. He ended up sending me some emails, and some of the stuff that was on there was based on conversations I'd had in private. So somebody was listening to my conversations or able to tap into that. But so I guess just a lot of strange activity. And I have a saying with an acronym: you can't make this shit up. And when it happens 20, 30, 40 times during a conversation around this topic, always, never anything else, it's pretty obvious that something else or someone else is listening in. It could just be the algorithms picking up keywords, which, the global monitoring system, you start saying certain words, they start recording your conversations.
Yeah.
and that's public information. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of us have gone through that. Some of the those that do share with me, some of the things that they told me was, it's appalling how other humans could do this to you. They're in a position of authority. They've got power, but they still do it. And yeah, it's sometimes when certain people want to come out, I tell them that take their time and see if that's what you really want, because once it's out, and it could bring you trouble down the road.
Well, I think certain people are very much programmed in the system. They might have been raised, in a certain way. Money, the ego is so strong. The higher self created the ego, as the voice of what it wants you to learn from. But that ego, when you have beliefs that you're doing the right thing, is very strong. We're also in somewhat of a spiritual war. Everything's energy before matter. And, I have sight of vision, and I've seen things jump onto people and then they've behaved very out of sorts. And there's some form of manipulation that happens. Yeah, for sure. So I think I think there is far more involved than we're aware of. And even with the beings, and a lot of people don't like me saying this, even with the beings that I've had experiences with, a lot of them have been positive. All of them, actually. I mean, I with the extraterrestrials, but I never get given the full amount of information. And I know, I haven't actually done any public sky watching in about 4 years. I pulled away to work on myself and work on the research with technology based on some of the downloads I'd got that matched unified physics and perpetual energy and those sorts of things. And one of the reasons I pulled away is I said that no being can come to me and talk to me unless they go through my higher self. And no one has permission to do anything when I'm asleep with me anymore. And I tell you, a lot of the contact stopped. And so no one was coming and talking to me through my higher self anymore. And there's one thing I've learned about the higher self: it always tells the truth. Okay. And so it frustrated me that I was getting half truths, and I felt like I was chasing the rainbow. So I actually did pull away. And as positive those experiences being, I think there is an agenda behind everything that will always benefit that race before us. I'm not saying that's bad or that they're bad, but I wanted to work on what the agenda was for our planet and humanity rather than focusing on the extraterrestrials. The one thing that they wanted, that the Arcturian, who I call Alto actually gave me healing that made me start toning, and alto means female soprano in singing. It's a range, and I have a good range of sounds that's having that experience. Is what he said was, coming as your guide, because I've never had the Native American. My guides have always been the aliens. We've been a bridge to getting you back to yourself, to fully trusting who and what you are and what you're here for. So I kind of felt when I started commanding that I'm only working through my higher self from now on. I've got stuff to do. I don't want little bits of info here and here. I wanted something more solid that I could bring into physical manifestation to help this world, to help humanity, to help the planet, which is where I started with Unified Self. And so my guide, and it might be different for others, told me that now I was ready to trust myself through my higher self, that I didn't actually need a lot more of that information and contact. And, excuse me, it's interesting when I go outside now, they often signal me as if to say, oh, we're here, and hang around and flash for an hour or so while we sit outside. And to be honest, Yannick, I got bored with UFOs.
Well, so, you want to go on to the next step, really. Yeah. Same for me.
Which is kind of why I stopped the sky watching. It was time to move on to the next step. So, and I certainly have, which is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I did that for a while. I guess everybody does the whole C5 thing in the beginning. And then you do get, so much contact. And after a while, you do get bored with it. But you want more. You want to be involved.
It's like, what's the point? This is fascinating. It's incredible. I feel grateful. But I'm ready to move on to actually doing something, not just seeing something.
Yeah.
So that was my evolution.
Have you ever had like these third eye visions?
Yeah. So I have had visions like that. It's come into me. Lots of different things actually. A lot of the premonition stuff has come through dream state. So I have dreamt about people and met them years later. I have had things like that. A lot of it happens instantly. I've had the telepathy saying, get in the right lane now. I've got in that right lane in an instant, come around the corner, I would have hit a horse float as I'd come around the corner if I hadn't followed that instruction. That was happening. Things like that would happen all my life, actually. I always had that there. The visions, a lot of the premonitions has truly come in the dream state or an awake state, and it's not so much eyes closed. I'm seeing it with my eyes open. Okay. So I'm seeing it in my mind, but I'm also seeing the tree. It's not like I'm in meditation. At 12, I picked up a National Geographic magazine that had the pyramids of Giza on it and 3 men on camels, which I actually have a copy of that now. It's a collector's copy. And I just wept. I wept, and I thought I was having a religious experience, like there was the 3 wise men or something. But then I look back, and Egypt has come into my life all the time. I remember my son, when he was 5, used to talk about seeing the dog-headed man everywhere, Anubis. And at that same time, I had a book club I was in send me 2 books on ISIS. In December, I actually went to Egypt in the middle of a pandemic. I was probably, I brought my ticket a year before, and I have a Kiwi passport, so I had the jurisdiction to come and go at the time, and was very, very careful because of what was going on in the world. But I actually went to Egypt and discovered many, many things, and part of that bigger picture, which I kind of won't talk about just yet because we're still compiling what we're going to do with that information. So, I've had those visions years and years ahead. I came to America in 2018, and I found a cabin that I'd been dreaming about, probably 15 times since I was 12. And that place is quite significant energetically. I still need to go back there. Haven't got the full picture about that, but I have had the visions like that. So, and it could often be in a conversation with someone, and I'll say something to them, and then it happens a few days later. So a lot of my stuff happens years and years later, which can be quite frustrating. But it gave me something to look forward to. So I do get those visions and things like that drop into my consciousness.
One time I was sleeping, and I heard my dad's voice in my head say my name, and I never dream about my dad. So that woke me up, and I was a bit concerned that this ain't normal. So I'm able to fall asleep. Now the thing is, my dad was out of town with his girlfriend because my mom passed away a few years ago, and he went out hunting. So I thought, okay, well, he's with her, so I shouldn't be like too stressed about it. So I wake up the next day, around 7:30, nothing's happening. 8:30, nothing's happening. At 10:30, I get this call from his girlfriend saying that my dad's lost in the woods. But my dad knows the area. He can't be lost. So I was a bit freaked out. So I start, putting on my clothes, and then I decide to, what the hell? I start driving right down. I wasn't too sure where he was located, but I knew roughly where, So he was about 2 hours away, and I started driving really, really fast. So maybe like 10 minutes in, I get a call from my dad, and he says, Yannick, I'm not, like, he was panicky, but he said, try to get over here fast. He said, no, I'm on the road already. But, long story short, when I get to the camp, I find where it is. The thing is, my dad had an arrow. He went crossbow hunting for moose, and he had one of the crossbow bolts go right through his leg. He was bleeding massively through. So the loss of blood was making him panic, and that's why he was confused. But he was able to get back to the camp, and so I was there to help him drive quickly to the hospital, which was about an hour and a half away. So the universe was sort of giving me a wake-up call to, something's going to happen, be prepared.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I can't say I'm psychic, but, when it comes to that, that's what, the types of things that do come in.
Well, that is a psychic ability. It's, the connection, they call it psychic energy.
Okay.
So, with my work, I call it source intelligence healing, and I do it at a distance. I'm in 11 countries around the world by word of mouth. This is the only advertising I've done, is be speaking about it on an interview. And I do have a website, but it's not something that I promote or post. And I often will tell the client what they went through. I get a vision or a feeling in my body, or I get the voice of their higher self. And, that is a psychic connection as such. It's quantum coherence through the heart field. And, your soul is a blueprint, Yannick, and the higher self uses it as the interface between the spirit part of us and the physical self. And the ego is the mind of the physical self. And the voice, we live in our ego. There's no ego death, otherwise there's a physical death. It's just the observation of it. And so, that was in your blueprint to do that. And so you had that vision. That is what's in your field, in your frequency, in your memory bank, in your soul vibrating out through your field, and the universe responds to that. So you were meant to find your father. These things, are for your benefit. Life's happening to you, for you, not to you. So that's part of you learning to master what you've got, you learning to trust yourself, and you protecting your family, because that's what, one of the things you've come in to work with them, and you have that psychic link between them. So you are psychic. We're all psychic.
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone knows when they walk in a room if someone's been talking about them or there's anger there. That is your heart field. That's 20 meters in diameter, feeling it. The indigenous here call it singing each other. And it is our energetic psychic connection to others to be able to perceive what we're not seeing, hearing, or what's going on in front of us, but we still pick up the truth of that energetic wave. It's our birthright. It's actually, the course that I've started teaching, Unified Self, is to teach people to unify everything. And those abilities to perceive are the natural progression of learning to understand yourself and work with your own frequency and your own energetic field. Naturally, you start to perceive others because that's how it works.
Now, you said that you seem to be really involved within the community. Are you still involved as much as you were a few years ago?
With the UFO community?
Yeah, because you've done, you're on papers, you might have done conferences.
Sure. My last speaking event was 2018 when I came to America and I spoke for free. Okay. Ray Hernandez, as a personal friend of mine, he's come to Australia and stayed with me, and Mary Rodwell and a few other friends of ours. And so when I said I was coming to America, he said, we'll put on a conference. And I was filmed in a documentary there as well and did a bit of sky watching. It was when I got back from that trip that I started to focus on myself and develop something else. So I did pull out of the UFO community as such. I stopped doing my public sky watching. It's a 3-hour drive to my location. I was holding space for a minimum of 40 people. It costed me several $100s for the location and the insurance and this, that, and the other. And I decided it wasn't serving me anymore. So as far as my involvement with ETs, it's never going to stop. Like I said, if I haven't been out and had a sky watch, I'll go out there and boom, they start doing things for me. And actually I asked out loud, just jokingly with my girlfriends, I sort of kept thinking, I've been offered a few locations to do some sky watching, and I've actually got a list of people that have said, look, if you start again, hit me up, let me know. And I went out and I was jokingly saying with my friends, well, if I meant to start sky watching again, I want something fantastic, like a meteor or something to come across the sky. And I shit you not. We had a meteor shower or something, and it came across the sky, and it not only was amazing, it had beautiful, what would you call it? They looked like angel wings coming off it. It was debris making a beautiful piece with the tail as well come across the sky, and then another one shoot in the opposite direction. And within 3 minutes, we had 8 different anomalies in the sky, including what looked like 3 satellites moving in uniform and then disappear in front of multiple people. So my involvement with the UFO community will always be there, but not so much the human community. Only because I've been focusing on other things, such as my healing work, the workshop. I want to teach people what I do in the healing room. I want to go in a different direction as far as technology and things to restore this planet and help humanity. And that's where my heart has always been. I've known since I was a young child that I'd be involved in that. And I certainly in 2012 and 13 had a whole lot of advanced downloads and information regarding the technology. And through the grace of God and the synchronicity of everything, I've connected with the right person to be able to achieve those goals. And we work together remotely. He's in America. We traveled together in Egypt as part of the mission. And so I sort of pulled back from that, and I've focused on putting together Unified Self to teach people what I do in the healing room to do for themselves. Because one, I have an energetic capacity. You know, I'm a single mum, so I work around my children for myself. I also have a financial ceiling working one-on-one. And although it's not about money, when you have goals that require global travel and you're funding yourself, then, you know, you have to make an income. And so my higher self said, it's time to actually give up the one-on-ones. It would be selfish not to share this with others. So I put together Unified Self and now teaching that. And I want to take that around the world. And it's something that I can do sort of in person over 3 days with follow-up online. So it allows me the time to focus on the other things that I need to bring into manifestation for the greater good. So that's kind of where I am with that.
Yeah, no wonder the government doesn't like you, because because you bring about change.
I'm certainly doing my best to do so. That is probably where my real passion is to clean up this beautiful planet. She's far more than just a planet. She's a stargate to every dimension that there actually is in the world. She's, you know, you're aware she's a conscious being, but she is incredible. And, you know, we don't need to go to Mars and live there. No. We need to spend all that money that they're spending on all that other research into bettering humanity and bettering the technology, because we're all aware it's there. But I believe the reason it's never seen the light of day is that consciousness and science haven't really merged to the level that it needs to. And I believe that that's what my colleague and I are doing. We work very, very well. And he has an incredible mind, an incredible IQ, and a very skilled person. I think he could build me anything. And I'll give an example of how we work together. In Egypt, for instance, you know, he looks at everything from an engineering perspective because he's a master of technology and engineering and electrical engineering. And I sit there and I tune in through my higher self and ask the source of all creation, and the pyramid themselves show me what your purpose is. And I started describing advanced technology and everywhere we went. And so I'm able to give exactly clearly what I'm being shown, and he can validate it with his experience in the physical world as far as engineering and machinery. And I don't have that level of experience or education within myself, and he knows that, but it's very accurate. And together there's some sort of resonance between us where we seem to hit the nail on the head exactly where we need to, wherever we go and whatever we do. So I also am aware that, where did you go? I'm also aware that this sort of stuff has been blocked in the past. We all are. We've all heard of Tesla and many other things. And one of my abilities is to clear a space, clear the energy, the entities, all of those things, remove them. And so we work in a space of, I'll give you an example. If we were going to have a meeting, I would set the energy of that space and protect that space, so we're not being monitored, that we're not being interfered with, and that it's private. And I trust in that. It's worked for us so far, but also it's a way of allowing that extra information to come through uninhibited and not judged. So we work very much like that. And the reason we've been able to do that is I taught him a bit of remote viewing. And so when we remote view, we have a process, a visualization, a meditation to go there. And then we write about what we see. We don't discuss it. So we individually, me in Australia, him in America, write what needs to be done. And then we share it afterwards when all pens are down. So, okay. And it matches every time. It matches. So that's quite amazing. It allows us to, it's sort of, I call it the double blind experiment, where we're both there blind to what each other's thinking, seeing or saying, write it, and then it matches. And so that's kind of given us some confidence in what we're doing, and we've just built it and worked together from there.
Have you had the pleasure of seeing other beings other than Arcturians or Greys?
Yes. I have had experience with mantids or insectoids to some degree. They were more overseeing it. They seemed very technological, medical.
So you did you wake up on board a craft, or did they do something to you?
No, I had an experience. I used to have a lot of sinus problems. Had some health issues, which I actually linked back to my first experience. I had mild asthma as a child that came on, well, probably a bit more than mild, came on pretty suddenly, and I kind of link it back to perhaps maybe a bit of the grief in the lungs that I felt when I realised I wasn't going to see those beings again for a long time, but also the reality of having to pay to live on this planet. I remember being quite a shock to me, that was foreign. So I had a lot of sinus problems. I was poisoned with steroids, massive amounts of steroids as a kid. We lived in a town that gave off constant pollution with a paper mill, and my dad worked in that mill. So I honestly used to carry a toilet roll around in my handbag, Yannick, because my sinus would go all the time. I couldn't tone. I try and tone om, and it would sound, so terrible that I didn't want to join a kirtan or a singing group or anything. And one night I had an experience, and I have spoken about this before, was a sleep state experience, and I was in what I call the round white room. So it's a room that's almost like mother of pearl. I've been in several rooms like this that have different purposes, but this was very much a medical space. And I was aware that I am on a table, dressed, quite comfortable. There are some small, medium, I don't know how high the table was because I was on it, greys around that were actually doing the procedure. There was one there that's the typical comforter that was having telepathy with me. And in the background, I was aware that there was a barrier, like a glass or crystal window, I want to say. And the insectoids were behind that, and they were almost like overseeing what was going on. And I had a procedure that seemed like a red laser open my face. No pain, no blood. And what happened was I had my sinuses cleared out. And I jumped forward a little bit there. With the one that was communicating with me, I demanded to see it. And they sort of were no. And there was this clicking, that backwards and forwards conversation I was aware of, where I couldn't hear what was going on. But I basically said that this is my soul contract. This is my body. This is my experience. But I'm allowed to see this. And so there was sort of some backward forward, and then I got to see myself. It was like hovering above my body, fully aware that I'm awake on that table, fully aware that I'm in a dream state experience with these beings. So I had the face lasered open, kind of peeled back, no pain, no blood, no fear. I got a bit of a smile on my face because I almost see it as a bit comical, like as if they were showing me something a little bit gruesome and this is why you shouldn't be seeing it. And yet really it didn't bother me at all. So and even when I speak about that, it almost feels a little bit illusionary, maybe in the hopes that I didn't demand to see anything again. I don't know, but it brings a feeling about in me. But anyway, I had what I would call a sinus procedure, because I did look up the cleaning out of sinuses online afterwards, because of what I'd seen was so graphic. And I saw little white things being pulled out of my nose. And so when I came to the next day and I woke up and was fully aware I'd had an experience, I had what looked like a little burn mark just on the edge of my nose and here. You know, when you burn yourself on the stove and it gets sort of brown and shiny looking? It was like that. And that was gone within a day or two. No pain, no anything. But I could breathe again, clear. And I wasn't full of sinus. I wasn't full of mucus. And I also, about 3 or 4 days later, I was in my Aussie City Centre that I had, and I was playing my singing bowls, and I had to tone, and I heard the voice again of probably the Arcturian. It's a familiar voice telling me to just let it out, let the sound out. And so I'm fighting this, knowing that I sound like a screechy, kid going through puberty almost. And I let the sound out and this beautiful pitch came out. And so using a chromatic meter, I realized I was toning 432 hertz and a few other frequencies, okay. 528 and some others, but I could hold a really good pitch as well, good tone. And they were healing, and people were having quite amazing reactions and experiences to that. So, I got a sinus clearing and I started expressing a higher level of frequency, which is relevant to some of my life mission work as well. So there was that procedure. I mentioned I closed my centre. I actually had found a melanoma, my second one on my back. So to me, disease like melanoma is a rubbish bin for trauma. And, I was processing some things and growing and healing and working on forgiveness, and my body was ready to expel the tumour. And so also through my ability, I could use my fingers like this and go around and feel a mole and feel if it was active with cancerous cells or not. And I found one on my back that I felt was unusual. The reason that I found it was after my first melanoma and after some gut problems I'd had from the steroids as a child with the asthma. I had regular blood tests just to see how my vitamin levels were, my blood count, all of those sorts of things, as a preventative measure, I guess, to make sure that I'm taking care of my physical vessel and it's receiving all the nutrition and things that it needs. And there were some things that were unusual in my blood count. I was deficient of vitamin D, I think Bs and zinc. Now, I know there is no test for melanoma, but my GP at the time said, with your previous case history, this could be a precursor to something coming back. So I went around and checked my body and found a small mole on my back that felt wrong to me. So I put cream on it. I also found a few on my sister and my mother, which all reacted to the bloodroot cream, which is actually illegal in this country or anywhere, I think, to use on the body, but I did it anyway. They allow it for animals, and I took care of that myself. It started out a tiny little freckle mole and opened up to a 3.5 centimetre tumour that took 35 days to come out of my body. And so for the next 5.5 months was the healing process of it sort of healing over the back. And while that was going, I had to keep a medical butterfly bandage on, which anyone that knows medical stuff will know what the butterfly bandage is, and it's got silver in it. So just like colloidal silver. So it's a bacterial bandage that can be left on the body for 3 or 4 days, maybe 5, so that wound care doesn't have to be done every day. And so one night I went to bed and I had a sleep state experience, fully aware in that space. A guy that I'd been dating was in that dream, and we were in the classic round room again. It wasn't the medical room. It was more of an experiencer. It would have been like a quiet lounge room, and there's a round mother of pearl room and a round bed on that, or couch, you could say. And he looked at me and we linked hands, and we kind of linked hands like this. And he said, just lay down and relax. And when he looked at me in the eyes, I remember thinking, this isn't you, or it's your ET self or something. There was something in the eyes. And it was as if in that moment, we sort of levitated and laid down on that bed. He'd said just lay down. The second thing he said was just relax. And as that happened, it was like having a pink plasma around our body. I actually lost all sight of him. It was just me. It was like a cocoon of a pink plasma. It wasn't liquid, it wasn't solid, but it was, I couldn't feel it, but it looked, plasma jelly, kind of waterish. And then I woke up. So there was nothing else in that experience. And so my son was home at the time, and my sister had just got home from her 4th night shift. So she'd arrived home about 8 in the morning. I'd actually asked my son to come and take my computer out of the room because I have experiences with electrical things and I blow them up. Well, I used to. I've sort of stopped that now. So he come and took the phone and the computer out of the room, and they sat in on the bed, and I said to him, wow, I had an experience last night. Told them about it. My sister said to me, hey, we need to clean your wound today. It's been on there for 3 or 4 days. And I said, yeah, okay. And she said, I'll be up at lunchtime, because she resets her body clock after night shift with waking up so she can go back to bed again. I did contact the person that was in that dream to see if he'd had any experience. He didn't, because he had a few unusual experiences after dating me and seeing some things. And so my sister came in at lunchtime and she took that bandage off, and she was very surprised. I remember she had coconut oil in her mouth, oil pulling at the time, when you swish it around your mouth for half an hour, so she couldn't speak. But she was in her mumble swearing, like freaked out at what she was seeing. And she's a nurse, so she's well aware of wound care. She's well aware what an ulcer looks like. She's well aware of what a procedure scar looks like. And in my scar, this is 5.5 months after it came out, and the healing, it wasn't healing. It wasn't covering over, Yannick. There's actually more to the story. The day of the experience in front of my son, I actually asked for help because I was on my way to the doctor. They suspected I had a rare melanoma on my toe, which didn't turn out to be that. So I had asked for help in front of my son, and then I had the experience. So the next day, she's taken the bandage off. She's freaked out. I had a perfect scoop mark in that scar, about this deep, like a centimetre maybe a bit smaller. It had fresh blood on the bandage. It had been sealed for 4 days. You can't take them off and reseal them. That's not what they're designed for. It wasn't an ulcer. An ulcer can take a period of time, quite a period of time, so especially on the back, to come about. And she changed it 4 days beforehand. So she cleared it out. We took photos of the blood. I have all those photos of the scoop mark. It coagulated overnight in 24 hours, which means it filled up with tissue, which is what a scar does. So when you have a scoop mark, if you went to your doctor and he cut out a biopsy, within 24 hours, it will coagulate and fill up, and then it will begin to heal. So that happened, and I healed more in 2.5 weeks than I had in 5.5 months. And it healed over my scar. I also had a lot of my mental capacity come back. So with the stress and pain, but also with that experience, I did take painkillers, strong painkillers from my doctor. and that had affected my mental capacity and just the exhaustion of healing. So within a couple of weeks, I was starting to feel really alert, and memory was coming back to my capacity again. So I had that healing as well, and that was quite amazing. I'm really grateful for that.
Coming back to the mantid, were you aware if they were wearing anything? Did they have a cloak on? Or
yeah, they did with the collar.
Did they what?
The collar. They did. Now I'm seeing this with my mind because, you know, I'm laying down, so I'm seeing lights above me in the room and these beings beside me. I could see the face of the one that was comforting me because, you know, they were in my face. The others were more in my peripheral. I could move my head and my eyes in that experience. I did kind of feel a little bit paralyzed. And I was aware that they were there. I could hear the clicking noises. And I guess you could say that I knew they were mantids, and I did have a picture in my mind of what they were. And there was on this particular one a purple coloured cloak or robe, and it did have an unusual collar. It came up like this, sort of around the sides. And so what I really saw in my mind's eye was the shape of the mantis head and the classic hands outside of that, and then the collar and the purple cloak. And again, that's a vision in the mind of perceiving, but knowing they were there, being able to feel them. I have had a few other sleep state experiences where I have seen them.
Okay.
One of my children had experiences with them as a youngster. A good friend of mine who's also contactee did as well. And my child explained what she saw in them, which that person then confirmed. Unless she had the experience, she wouldn't know that. And what she saw in the physical body was like little lights moving through the vascular system of that being, coloured lights, which has been reported with some mantid experience as well. I haven't personally seen that, but have had them come to me in sleep state experiences, more like just a flash of that face of who I was working with, and it always seems to be around that mother of pearl room. So yeah, so I know they can put memories and things, use your consciousness as well. Whenever I've had the mantis experience, they've showed me things that I'm familiar and comfortable with.
Okay.
And I know that stuff out of my consciousness because when it's happened, it hasn't been quite perfect. It's almost, again, been a little bit comical that they've tried to create something out of my consciousness and got it wrong, and it's almost humorous. And that's happened a few times when I've seen that flash of the mantid face. So they have an ability to definitely read your thoughts.
See, when you started talking about the collar, how you explained it, it really made me think of Simon Sparks, the British. I'm not sure.
I know who Simon is.
Yeah. Well, he also had mantid experiences as a child, so the way he drew them clearly had a cloak, but with a collar that would stand up, and I thought that was pretty cool that you came with that.
Wow. Yeah, it was almost like, you know, you'd see Dracula back in the day.
Yes,
that kind of looking collar. So
now, do you think they're coming back to the mantid? Do they have mostly a sort of a leader role? They seem to be more higher up when it comes to governance.
In the experience where I had my sinus done, like I said, they seemed to be overseeing the whole thing. They were, what I can relate it to, is like if you've ever seen, it's been so long since I watched the TV, but you know, where they would be watching a medical procedure from a higher level, and it will be the head doctor overseeing, and they can talk through phone or whatever it is to whoever's doing the procedure. It was kind of like that. It seems that they were watching me, viewing what was going on and giving instruction, and even they seemed higher up as far as their location in that room or wherever that space was. the greys to me seemed like, the nurses that were doing the procedure, doing a lot of the work, and that I know that's commonly reported with people I've spoken to. They certainly seemed energetically scientific, technical, a little bit authoritative, not particularly emotional. So whereas one was comforting and the other was very much clinical, would be the words I would use, and the feeling that I've got with the Mantids. Yeah.
Are you aware if you've been, if you haven't had any like other skin samples taken, or maybe part of the, because have you ever had any phantom pregnancies?
No.
No. So you're not aware if you're like part of the hybrid program?
I don't believe I am.
No.
Not at all.
Okay.
Especially with my awareness of being told when I was 7, first and only human life, you're here for this shift.
Okay.
So,
do you recall the instruments that were used on you during that procedure?
Not a laser, actually, and what looked like a long set of thin needle tweezers, I guess, because what I was seeing was little white balls, like little cotton balls, being pulled out of my sinus, and it was closed with a laser too. And it was interesting. Yeah, that was about it. It was the laser. I don't even recall like my face, the skin being peeled back. It was like I just was seeing it in almost like slides, like seeing that happen, and then next minute my face is exposed and I'm recognizing, oh, there's no pain and no blood, and next minute there's this the next slide, you could call it, because it wasn't like I was watching people move or beings move around and pick this up. I wasn't seeing that picture. I was saying, bam, there you are on the table, this is there. But at the same time, being aware of being spoken to, but what I was seeing was almost like slides. Slides is the wrong word. It came across as if an image was put in me that was a movie image, but it was very much like seeing something go from one scene to the next. That's how I can kind of explain that. So as if slides were being moved across on a slideshow, but in that slide was a movie. So all I remember is the laser and what looked like the long tweezers pulling something out of my nose. And that's what I Googled the next day. And that's what I did find, was those white, what looked like little bits of cotton balls being pulled out of a sinus to be cleared. So not a lot. I didn't see a table with instruments. I didn't see any of that. It was somewhat limited, somewhat convoluted, which is pretty typical.
Mm-hmm. I'm amazed at the technology that they use, that, the fact that we're not bleeding. I've had a friend who was on a ship once, and they actually took his heart out, showed it in front of him while he was still alive, and put back the heart in. So they do have a way to stop time and be able to do the operation, and then put everything back together. So that was pretty amazing. Now,
there's something there though, and I said it earlier, that it gives me a feeling when I talk about it, as if to say, like there was that conversation back and forwards that I'm not ready to see this, and then a demanding of, actually, this is my soul contract. I get to see it. I'm in charge here with my body. And I'm a little bit resistant like that, as far as a sovereign being. I don't, it's my body. I want to see what's going on, kind of thing. And that feeling of seeing that lasered open, being a bit comical, because I know a sinus procedure does not require lasering a face open. It just goes up the nose.
Yeah.
That's what I saw in the video. And that dawned on me while I was watching the video. Was that just me getting to see that, so I didn't ask to see that procedure again and not ask too many questions? I don't know. But it makes me want to laugh just thinking about it, as if to say, they showed me something gory and it didn't bother me at all.
That's funny.
Yeah. So they're interesting experiences. None of them are really, it's all very convoluted. what goes on in the experiences. It's not like being shown the full picture. Even as a child, having that awareness the beings were coming, the energy coming off the waves, seeing the orbs come into the room, linking hands, seeing the light, and not remembering anything else beyond that, except for waking up knowing I'd had the experience. So they're only letting you see a very small part of the experience. And that's why I think they're here to prompt us to wake up, prompt us into realizing that there's far more out there in the universe. There's far more to life than we're told or programmed. And that essentially what's happening here within us and within our planet affects far more than just us. It goes well on from the micro to the macro. And there is a sense that what has happened here on Earth, as far as I believe that we have been dumbed down as a species, created and dumbed down, that we are holding up things throughout the universe in some level, as if there was a timeline or a space for this evolution of the planet. And humanity was getting itself in a bit of trouble as far as the things we've been doing here, and using things for war instead of progression. That there was sort of a window for us to do what we're doing, and so they've come along to wake us up, prompt us, and take some responsibility and recognise that what we do has a much further reach than what we're led or aware of, led to believe or aware of.
Can you tell me if you ever had paranormal stuff happen to you, like poltergeists, things that you did talk about the book being taken outside of the box, but a lot of experiencers have these things that tend to move or are being misplaced around the house.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd consider it a sneaky spirit, actually. It's just coming in a bit mischievous, moving things around, maybe making me aware that there's something in my space, which usually means I need to clear it and hold that space a little stronger. It could be trying to get me to be present. I find that things will go missing, simple things. It might be the keys. I put them in the same place every day and bam, they're not there. Run around the house looking for them and bam, they're there and I just didn't see them. It's usually a message to me to be more present, and I'm usually burning the candle at both ends. So, whether that's a sneaky spirit or a guide, I'm not sure. I have definitely had, I have had a few negative experiences, not with what I would consider ET, more a negative entity. They have happened before I've gone to do quite important things. Through some healing sessions with Indigenous people, I was told that I was never meant to discover those things. They were meant to energetically hold me back so I wouldn't be running on all cylinders to go off and do what I need to do. But I'm very aware of when I wake up and my energy's not right, and I would ask the question of what is it I'm not seeing and allow my consciousness to show me, and sure enough I'd wake up fighting something off that was basically just trying to drain me, because I don't feel they can harm me as such, It's more of an interference and a drain of energy, because most of the entities that I've encountered, and I clear entities off people in sessions, often quite quietly, because they don't really need to know, and they literally feed off our fear and our negative energy in the same way that we feed off vegetables. And not all of them have a malicious intent, but some of them do. So I have had some entity experiences that weren't particularly positive. And if you weren't someone that was having UFO experiences or even, having psychic paranormal experiences all your life and comfortable with that, it could have been quite scary because they don't look particularly pretty. But again, all a gift. Life is happening for us, not to us.
Yeah.
So although, you can say, how can having something that looks quite demonic be a gift? Well, I am the commander of my space, and I'm the commander of my energy, because we all have an individual frequency. It's up to me to hold more of that space. If I want to play in this realm, and I have to be responsible for my actions. And so it was a gift to show me that I needed to up my physical boundaries, my energy boundaries, and to be aware also that I was about to embark on something important. If they had to come and try and get me in my sleep, I must be doing something right, because I do have an ability to remove entities and they don't come back. And I know they don't come back because it was actually a chiropractor, when I gave a friend a healing, recognized she'd had a healing from someone who works with the pure golden source, and that me being that person removes entities and they don't come back. And that's how I met that chiropractor. She wanted to meet me, and she's now my chiropractor, and we have a friendship as well. So, and that's come through multiple different sources where I've cleared people and then something's changed in them. So I see those experiences as a bit of a gift in a way, because it wasn't pleasant, but I wasn't injured. I wasn't hurt. I might have been tired and drained and annoyed that I hadn't had a good night's sleep in a few weeks. But I then sort of set a new boundary. And when you set a new boundary, there's a new space to step into. So there was always a gift that came from that. Fear is the enemy. It really is.
Have you ever seen shadow people?
Yes. Yes, I've seen Hatman.
Really?
I've seen Batman. Yeah, I've seen Hatman. Hatman tried to come in an ayahuasca experience, actually. And it was actually the person I was journeying with and holding space for. And he came and went pretty quick. So
really?
It's more of an observation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've had 5 in my bedroom, but they were all the same, and they were like, they had really broad shoulders, and they looked like football players, or let's say rugby players. But instead of having where the neck would be, they had this really huge helmet.
Yeah.
So each time somebody tells me about shadow people, I want to try to, well, I'm hoping they're like mine, but again, most of the time it's the shadow man with the hat.
And he didn't have much of a neck either.
Really?
And I know what you mean. Yeah, he had the very broad shoulders where it almost looked like there was no neck. Like a gridiron player, the big shoulders are wide, and then an unusual head and hat. I've had friends have experiences with that as well, because they rang me and said, can you do a clearing on me at a distance? And they've described the same thing. Again, those people were embarking on stepping out of their comfort zone. One friend was traveling overseas on her own and then had that experience. She'd also had a negative experience with the people in that country. She didn't speak the language very well, and a little bit rude to her when she was ordering food, and she knew that they were talking about her, so she took on an uncomfortable, insecure kind of feeling, and then that night had that experience. So
that's why.
So they're feeding off our energy, and that's one of the most important things we can do at this time on the planet, is deal with our stuff, because we are biofeedback, biological beings, and so the universe is responding to us. So the energy that we put in is what we create in the world around us. It's the vibrational frequency and structure that we hold for evolution. So dealing with yourself and your fears, especially with what's going on in the external world at the moment, is extremely important, because fear is the biggest virus on the planet.
Do you have anything that you might want to share with everyone before we end this?
To trust in what's going on the planet at the moment. I know it seems very dark, very scary. There's a lot of coercion, a lot of disagreements about doing this and doing that. To know that we are on track. We are absolutely on track. The 5D energy of a higher consciousness is merging with third. And what we're seeing on the planet now is the pushing out of the fourth, which is the lower void and astral. And the same as in my work, in my healing space, we know there's no growth without uncomfortableness, because the ego has rules, the mind has rules. You were saying about everything being circular, everything is like a circuit, and everything is interconnected. So to trust in this process, that it's all part of God's plan, and for us to come into a higher space of evolution and energy, we have to purge out the lower, and it will all expose itself. I have been waiting for what is currently happening on the planet since I was about 7 or 8 years old. So it doesn't mean that we are to be complacent and sit on our laurels. No. It means that when we take action, to make sure that we're taking it from the heart and not with anger and not with fear. Because right now we are at the eye of the needle, and people need to decide, who are they feeding? Are they receiving the light, or are they feeding the entities with their fear? I don't look into, I don't buy into any of this story on the planet. It doesn't mean I don't know that it's real. It doesn't mean that I don't know that people are suffering. It doesn't mean that I don't know that there are things happening here that shouldn't be happening, and our rights and all of that. But what I do know is that we were born for this, and that's why we're awake. And that's why they've come and prompted us to know ourselves. Because it doesn't matter who we've been. It only matters what we contribute right now in each moment. So my advice to everyone would be to really deal with yourself. And if you're having troubles and issues, I suggest that you rant it out on a piece of paper and don't read it, burn it. Get that energy out of your body, because everything is energy before matter. And all of the turmoil and troubles that we're going through, our higher self created our ego to show us that stuff so we could grow and evolve into the beings that we know we're here to be. But we have to do the work. And so whatever you do, if you're standing up for rights, if you're protesting, whatever it is, make sure you're coming from the right place, because your anger and your fear feeds the entities that are actually energy to matter, have planned this a long time ago. And that's why all those listening that know that they are part of this are awakening up, so that you can remember how powerful you are, and you are a being of love. As cliche as that is, it all comes down to love. And we're going to make it. And together, standing in our hearts, we are so light and so strong, we blind the dark, and they don't like it. There wouldn't be so much control and coercion on the planet if they weren't running shit scared right now. And I do believe that everyone's falling on their own sword. And some of the things that are being shared on Facebook, I haven't had a TV in 8 years, so I don't watch the news. Some of the things that are being exposed and emails that are being exposed, people are already falling on their own swords. Yeah. And that's exactly how I've seen it play out all these years. So, be love. What would love do now? Okay. That would be my advice.
Well, you've got an awesome way with words, Lauren. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So, well, if those that wish to contact you, can they contact you through your website?
Absolutely. So my website is www.laurenmkurth.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for coming on. I had loads of fun tonight. And
thank you, Yannick. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your work at helping awareness and expanding consciousness. I really appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. To those watching, hope you enjoyed tonight's show. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone.
See you later.
Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Gray, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.